That's not good either, because even if no more crossed the floor, the 4 that crossed is still unheard of. Trudeau had one, but only one. And he was the worst prime minister in Canada history, Canadian history, according to some conservative supporters. What does that make Pierre Poilievre when he lost 4? Hey, everybody, and welcome back. So the Liberals have pulled off a miracle. They now have majority governments. They went from 18 months ago with Trudeau to not even looking like they were going to get 40 seats in the next election to minority government, and then within a year, a majority government. How do we get here? And is this going to go down in history? Yes. Not only is Mark Carney going to go down in history, but so is Pierre Poilievre, and not for the reasons that you supporters or him himself would like. So let's take a look at what happened over the last year to 18 months. So back in 2022, Pierre Poilievre became the leader of the Conservative Party. Had great support. Everybody hated Trudeau, so he looked like to be the favorite to win the next election. Biding his time. Just attack, blame Trudeau. All the issues are the Liberal government. Don't worry about what's going on in the rest of the world, how everybody else is having the same issue in terms of supply chains, increased costs, and everything else. Blamed everything on woke, DEI, fake news, CBC, fake news of the CBC. Typical, Donald Trump rhetoric, because, of course, it was working for Donald Trump, so he got on the bandwagon. Nobody learns from history that everybody gets burned at the end when they hitch their wagon to Donald Trump. But, of course, Pierre Poilievre, knowing better, went on that bandwagon and used his rhetoric to try to win. But at the end of the day, even if he sat still, said nothing, he still would have been the next Prime Minister of Canada, because everybody hated Trudeau. You know why I know that? Because at the end of the day, when they had a different option, Mark Carney, they chose him over Pierre, because Pierre didn't have any ideas, anything substance to how to fix Canada. And of course, it also had to deal with Donald Trump. Again, hitching his wagon to Donald Trump. So when Donald Trump got reelected, started attacking Canada, tariffs, claiming that we were going to be the 51st state and everything else. Canadians rallied behind leaders that knew that Donald Trump was bad for Canada, okay? Even Doug Ford, okay, originally thought Trump was going to be great for the U.S. and the relationship with Canada, but soon found out that he was no good, and even understood that Trump was no good for Canada because of the attacks, tariffs, and everything else. Pierre didn't do anything. Always talked about how Donald Trump had nothing to do with Canada, the problems that we had were internal, and so on and so forth, even though the tariffs that Donald Trump was enacting on Canada was hurting our economy. Never understood why he didn't go along like everybody else. So he lost a 25-point lead 3 months before an election. Okay? Lost his own riding of 20 plus years of more than 3,000 votes. Again, lost to somebody who was a better choice. The only reason why he had a 25-point lead was because everybody hated Trudeau. But when they had a better choice or another choice, somebody like Mark Carney, who was charismatic, had a head on his shoulder and everything else, they chose him. Especially being Mark Carney, not hitching his wagon to Donald Trump and actually addressing the issues of what's going on with Canada, which was also Trump. So Mark Carney gets elected, okay? 169 seats, so he had a minority. Just kept plugging along, doing what he had to do for Canada, while Pierre Poilievre kept talking about rhetoric. He wasn't humbled at all by his loss of 25 points and his own riding. Double down, triple down, quadruple down on his rhetoric. The Liberals are at fault. We have to establish a deal with the U.S. Mark Carney's not the person to do that. He's flying everywhere, making deals with other countries, but he should be working on the U.S. when all Canadians understood that you can't make a deal with Donald Trump. Case in point. When Trump was renegotiating NAFTA, one of his sticking points was the Canadian market was unfair to the dairy farmers of the U.S. Wasn't allowing them to enter the Canadian market because of our quota system. So Trudeau renegotiated a little bit with it and allowed more of the American dairy farmers to come into our Canadian market. Trump loved it. Fast forward to today, Trump is still upset with the Canadian market treating the dairy farmers unfairly. But that's his deal. That was what he negotiated. So even if he gets something he wants, he still will find problems with his own deal. So how do you negotiate with that? How do you make a deal with a person like that? Especially one time it's security. Sometimes it's Canada taking advantage of the U.S. market, the fentanyl. The points keep changing from one to another. So how do you negotiate with that? When Doug Ford aired that advertisement in the U.S. explaining how tariffs not only hurt Canada, but their own people, and used quotes from, I believe, Ronald Reagan. Man Baby got upset, left the negotiating table. How do you make a deal with that? But Pierre Poilievre believed we should still work with the U.S., that we should spend time, valuable time, trying to negotiate with an unhinged person like that. Canadians saw that. So why? So Mark Carney just ignored him and went and built new alliances with other nations around the world, new partnerships with other countries who are also being attacked by the U.S. The Canadians saw that. Even Pierre Poilievre was complaining how Mark Carney was spending a lot of money on his travels, which is insane because as a prime minister, a leader of a country, you have to travel to make deals. People saw that. Never change his rhetoric. Blame, blame, blame with no ideas. So, during that time, his own MPs saw this. Saw what Mark Carney was doing, how he was leading Canada down the right direction, and Pierre Poilievre had no clue what he was doing. So, out of the 5 MPs that crossed the floor, 4 of them were from the Conservative Party. That's not good as a leader of a party, especially when he boasts that he got so many young voters, the most Canadian votes for his party in the last 10, 15 years or whatever it was, and you lose 4 MPs to backroom deals. You're not a good leader if you can't convince your own MPs that you guys chose to run to represent the Conservative Party. Shows your lack of leadership. That your own MPs don't even want to follow you. And there's still rumblings. They say up to 40 MPs, which I don't know if that's true or not, but even if it's just say it's not 40, let's say it's just 5. That's not good either, because even if no more cross the floor, the 4 that crossed is still unheard of. Trudeau had 1, but only 1. And he was the worst prime minister in Canadian history, according to some conservative supporters. What does that make Pierre Poilievre when he lost 4? So, fast forward to today, with those 4 plus 1 from the NDP plus the by-elections. Okay, out of the 3 by-elections, of course, 2 were safe havens. but less conservatives came out to vote, which I probably understand. They say, why waste my time? They're going to get it anyways. But the one, Tierborn, okay, the one in Quebec, where the previous MP had originally won it by one vote. And then, of course, one was sent back to a Bloc Québécois voter because of Election Canada. There was, like issues with the address or something. And then that vote was counted, which was right. The Supreme Court did an excellent job and made the right decision, which then tied it. Therefore, I said, we got to go back and do a by-election. She won it with multiple votes. I think it was like 200 or 300 votes. Okay, it wasn't just by one. So even that riding says, yes, we still want a Liberal MP to represent us because Mark Carney's doing a good job. His favorability is still in the 60s. Even in Alberta, he still has 60 or just under 60% favorability. Pierre Poilievre's is just above 30. He's not the leader for the Conservative Party. He never was. The only reason why, I've stated this before, I'm going to state it again, the only reason why he had a 25-point lead was not because of his ideas. It was because people hated Trudeau. They hated him. And we're pretty much a two-party system, so it's either Liberals or Conservatives. They figured, what the hell, let's try the Conservatives. But because of his rhetoric, because he had no ideas, he wasn't really showing anything different, that when people had a different choice than Trudeau for the Liberals, Mark Carney, who has a head on his shoulder, and Pierre Poilievre hitching his wagon to Donald Trump and not disavowing him, really, they picked Mark Carney. So, I'm also going to state this as well. Pierre needs to leave the party, but he's stated that he's not going anywhere. Another sign that he's not a good leader. For all the things you want to talk about bad about Justin Trudeau, okay? And there's a lot. At least when the time came, he left the party for the good of the party and good of the country. They won. Because at the time when Trudeau was still leader, they were not even looking to get maybe 40 seats at the next election. So we saw begrudging. I think he didn't really want to leave, but he understood that he needed to go. He was unpopular. Same thing goes with Pierre Poilievre. He's unpopular. If he doesn't leave, even though they're probably telling him he needs to go, Justin Trudeau is still a better leader than Pierre Poilievre. And that's not good. That Justin Trudeau made a better decision, a leadership decision for the country and for party that Pierre Poilievre won't even do. That says a lot. So this is going to go down in history. One for the history. Of two party leaders during the same time are going to be in the history books for different reasons. Mark Carney taking a almost dead Liberal Party from barely going to get 40 seats to a minority government, then to a majority government within a year, able to attract 5 MPs to cross the floor and winning 3 by-elections. Okay? Where Pierre is going to be in the history books for losing a 25-point lead 3 months before an election, losing his own riding of more than 3,000 votes that he had for 20 years, and losing 4 MPs by crossing the floor, and still not leaving as the party leader. It's going to be interesting how they're going to word these classes that they're going to have, or the subject, how they're going to, maybe it'll be like the rise and fall of Canadian MAGA, or what not to do as party leader, or what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing as party leaders, shown by two men during the same time period. Like this is going to be interesting, and it's going to be one for the history books. Anyways, that's it for me. Let me know what you think in the comments. How you think Canada is going to be destroyed because the Liberals are now in power again. Of course, the sky's falling always for you guys. Or how you believe this is a good thing for Canada, and how we'll be stronger for this now that we don't have to have a minority government and everybody has to have their 2 cents into every time a decision needs to be made. Anyways, guys, take care. We'll talk later.